Hello, thank you for clicking on the video. This is episode 12 of This Game Wears Building Chester Zoo series, which focuses on the buildings in front of us, largely Realm of the Red Ape, which is this large exhibit here, which consists of the main building, which we actually built on stream a few weeks ago and then detailed in our last video, which you can find by clicking on the eye over in the corner. Since then, we have built everything around the outside, around the perimeter, including this backstage car parking area and this building over here. We are going to be looking around all of that in detail. We will also be going inside the building, just because there's been a couple of very minor changes. But if you're interested in what's inside the building, then you maybe want to go and have a look at our last video, which is episode 11. So to kick off, this is the aerial view of what we've been building over the last few weeks. There are quite a lot of bits and bobs to it. There is this enclosure here, so there are 4 enclosures around the outside. There's the large enclosure here, which is orangutans, a back enclosure over here, which we will get a bit more of a look at later on, and a smaller enclosure over in this corner, which we haven't occupied yet, and another smaller climbing enclosure over here, which is attached to this outbuilding which we built this time around as well for this video. The ramp at the back, that is also new, and this sort of parkish area, park area, like a sitting area in the corner. Now we're going to have a little look at that just to give you a bit of context. This is the entrance to the zoo, and this is our last build prior to this, the Spirit of the Jaguar. You can tell, I think, that the size of this, the scale of this is pretty massive, to be honest. A lot has gone into this build, and a lot of planting, a lot of detail work. We're going to start off just having a look at the backstage areas. So it's the first time I've done a backstage area or anything that's not been enclosure or animal related. Now, if I come down over actually near the Spirit of the Jaguar, so I'll take us from the Spirit of the Jaguar building. If I come down here, we've got a couple of greenhouses and like a tool building, which I've built using barriers. Then we've got this area here is occupied by another building, which I can't get any detailed photographs of, so I've not been able to put that in. But we've then got the car park, which, as boring as it probably looks, I've actually quite enjoyed making. We've got a few grid lines there to tell vehicles to keep off, and then our car parking spaces here, a bit more gridding, and then car parking as far as the eye can see, all the way down to our backstage building, which might also double up as the library. I'm not really certain on that. All the way down we've got planting, various different planting, and a bit of curb work. We've also got, I should have pointed that out as we passed, I've built this, it's not brilliant, but I've built this container. So I had a little look at containers on the internet, and this is what I've come up with. So you can change the colour of it. It's actually not bright blue in the zoo itself, but I've made it bright blue to make it stand out. And then in here, I think there is probably, from the looks of things, like a bin area. So I could probably put some bins in there. I've also given the zoo several more disabled parking spaces than I think it actually has in this area. I think there's probably only a couple in each row, but you can never have too much disabled parking, I don't think. So as we go along, this is actually a workable building for the game. So as I said, I think it might be the library, but I'm not 100% certain. So if you do know for sure, please do let me know below. Inside the middle of the library is this planted area. It's quite like a formal garden, and again, this is the closest that I could get to what they've got in there. And obviously I've made a few flourishes like the gorilla in the middle, but that is just using smaller 2-meter paths to make the pattern around the edge, some geometry, and a large 8-meter diameter path there to make that pattern. We've then edged out the building with a few, that area is not particularly clean, but we've edged the building with smaller 2-meter paths around the perimeter. Not all the way around the perimeter, it goes in a different direction when you're around here, but then we've got the entrance over here. Now I do need to do work on the inside, but it's not a priority right now. What I do like about this building is I've been able to incorporate the staff buildings into it. So here's a workshop, and I don't know, that's probably a black void in there, isn't it? Oh no, that's a fake door. But we do have on the inside all the different buildings, and I've been able to do it so that you can see into and out of the buildings, and also staff can get into and out of them as well. In terms of keeping visitors out of this area, I'm thinking that I'm going to try and put in just a tiny little bit of staff path along there, along the edge there, so that it sort of acts as a barrier. But I mean, this building does need a bit more work. The actual building has a lot more windows in there, and I imagine doors in this central area. It also has some solar panels, which I did try and work in with the solar arrays that we've got in the game, but it just wouldn't sit properly on the roof, so I wasn't able to do that. But I'm quite pleased with it as it looks, and I'll hopefully be putting it onto the workshop at some point in the future as a workable building. So if you want that building, keep an eye out on our workshop. You can find the links to all of those sorts of things in the description below. So spinning around from there, if we come down to, I'll tell you what, we'll go into Tegid Cam. Bear with me, I'll be back in a flash, you'll never notice. So we're now in Tegid Cam view, so we are getting a visitor's eye view of the zoo. This here in front of us is the first of our orangutan enclosures. Now, from a guest's eye view, there's not actually any, as far as I can see, of our orangutans around, but this is the way that the zoo has planted up the enclosure. It's very bushed up, presumably to give the animals a little bit of privacy when they want it, and if they want to come to the front, then they can. What they do have as well, presumably to keep the orangutans in, is this water work at the front. Now this was quite a hassle to get right, or to get as close to right as I even have now, and I'm not entirely happy with the way that the water runs down, but it was enough work as it was to get it to what it is. But this is how you'll be seeing a photo at some point as a comparison. I've got a little bit of water in the bottom here as well for it to run into, so that's the realism side of things. We've got these very large climbing frames as well, which were really fun to do. It's the first time I've done climbing frames with the climbing animals. Unfortunately, the orangutan don't seem to have used them yet, and occasionally the game, when you load it in, it doesn't register it as climbable at all, so that's unfortunate, but it is what it is. So that's our first enclosure. We will get a bird's eye view as well. I'll take us into the actual enclosure itself so we can see what's going on inside. So we've got a couple of feeding trays, and then the actual interior of that bushed area is open, and the orangutans are actually using it. So I presume that is as designed zoo-wise, and that's actually how they wanted it. So that's the other thing. We can also get into the interior of the enclosure through there. So this is not, if you've been to the zoo, if you're familiar with the zoo, then you will know that this is not how the zoo has it set up. The ins and outs of the exhibit do not work the way that they work here. They're not on the ground like that, but I've decided to do it that way for my ease, to be honest. We've also got added these structures. These are climbing structures for the orangutans, and then this actually holds up a net that goes from here all the way up and is all the way around the edge here. So they've got like an inside-outside enclosure. There are two separated sections of that as well, so each of the animals in this exhibit can get to an outdoor-indoor sort of area. And I've managed to, it was a bit of a hassle getting those to work actually as part of the enclosures, but I managed to do it in the end. Now, one of the things that I did have trouble with as well was this walkway, because the walkway is made of these wooden sections. that most of these are climbable sections, so putting those in meant that the orangutans started escaping willy-nilly, and I had to do a little bit of work to try and make them stay in their enclosure. One of the things that I've done, actually, and this was probably a sensible thing to do anyway, I had them running down all the way to the ground, but I've taken, these are the ones that are sticking up by the ramp, and I've taken out the bottom ones for the most part all the way around so that the orangutans can't actually reach it. I've also in places moved the barrier, so the barrier is slightly further in than maybe it should be, but that was the best way, the only way in fact, that I could get that to work without allowing the orangutans to escape. So we have done this second ramp. The first ramp was done in the last video, or for the last video, and this second ramp we did for this one. The actual panels, these panels here, they were given to us by Backblast, who you can go and watch his videos at the link in our description. He's also making Chester Zoo. We sort of ran into the same idea around the same time, and we've sort of been collaborating on small bits, but for the most part we do all of our own stuff, but there are little bits and bobs that we've given to one another as things have gone on, and that actually was given to me on the stream to make things a little bit easier for me on that day. So thank you, Backblast, for that. We've then got this park area. It's not really a park, I wouldn't necessarily say, but it's like a little sitting area, I guess, more grass. People do have like their picnics or whatever on here. They sit on the grass in the sunshine, but it's quite a small, relatively small area in the grand scheme of the entire zoo. We've got a little sign that I made for the orangutans, which mimics the signs that are actually in the zoo at this point. We've also then got this enclosure here, which you'll see is empty for us, but I'm not exactly sure what's in here in the actual zoo, but in fact this enclosure might not even be here still, so if it's not, let me know, and or if you know what's in there and we've got it in game, let me know and I'll be able to get it in. We've then got the planting around the edge and all this bamboo work as well. Then this is just a gate, but the gate is on, if you like the gate is on the workshop, so you can grab it. And then behind the gate we've got this backstage area, which is staff only, and it's quite an old building. I think it's one of those old sandstone buildings, and if you go on Google Earth, in fact I'll put a picture up in a moment, if you go on Google Earth you can have a little peek over the top of that gate that we've just gone through over here, and you can see that in behind it is a sort of concreted area, but then it's also got the sort of these plants, sort of weedy area. You can't see it when you're walking around at normal height, but when you are on Google Earth you can see through and in. Now if we go in here, I haven't done anything with this, but this is one of our buildings that I've added. Now this would presumably be the gibbons, or part of the gibbons enclosure, and at some point I will rework that to make it a little bit prettier inside, but for the most part I was trying to make it pretty on the outside. So if I come back out of Tegid again and take us over to have a little look at this in all its glory, this is the building from this point of view. We've got our uneven fencing, which is a favourite of the zoo throughout. This sort of uneven up and down fencing is all over the place in here. And then we've got another smaller climbing frame, so if you compare it, you can actually see in the background that's the orangutan climbing frame. This is a much smaller version, and then it's attached, well, the climbing frame is not necessarily, but the enclosure is attached to this building here, which is in the real zoo. I'll show you a picture of it if I can find one. This is a sandstone, I think a sandstone building or sandstone facade, and then it's got sort of plaster work on the bottom of it, and also like metal cladding on the sides here. So that is what we've come up with for this building. It's actually quite mixed in terms of the materials used. So there's plaster, there's brickwork, there's metal cladding, there's old sandstone in there as well. This enclosure here, for anyone again that's intimate with the zoo, you might notice, I think there's supposed to be a moat around here. But in terms of getting that to work and making it a workable enclosure, because of the fencing that I've put in, it just wasn't going to happen. So I've left the moat out, and again, that might be something that I come to at a later point. Back into Tejid Camp. So in front of us, we've got one of the signs that I've made for the orangutans, the realm of the Red Ape enclosure. And if we follow it around, and take a walk down this path, we get a look at all of the planting that we've put in for the frontage, and this fencing here as well. Now, if we were back over in the rear of this exhibit, then you would see that actually that I've got a much longer section of that back there. We haven't had a look in the largest enclosure. So if we hop over the fence, this is the first enclosure that I actually did in terms of this video. So we've sort of gone backwards around things. The things that I did last, we've started with first, and this is where we end up. And this is, again, it's an outdoor enclosure, similar in style to this one over here, but a different shape and a different setup, with the rope work attached to the building itself, and then three main clumps of trees and plant work throughout. So if we drop down into it, we can get a bit of a look at our orangutans, and you'll see that I've peppered the floor with these bushes. So the bushes are underneath. This is something that I did in the Spirit of the Jaguar build as well, in order to make it sort of look like there was leaf foliage, thin leaf foliage throughout. I've buried some larger bushes to make it look a little bit sparser. We have then also got quite built up bushing around here. This is that scaevola and I think cowberry that I've used for that, so that it feels a bit more like real undergrowth, you know, the sort of stuff that you'd get in a wood or a forest. The climbing frame itself, I've used these climbing poles, but I've also, instead of using ropes, I've used the liana vines. There was a lot more variation to them in terms of lengths, and they actually, I think, look pretty good in terms. They look quite ropey, and I like the way that they blow as well. You might have got a little look at that when we were closer in. Do you see that it's sort of blowing in the wind? I quite like that. So that is our realm of the Red Ape. Now I'll give you a quick fly through of the inside. There is, I think, only a couple of changes that I've made. So you've got obviously the bits that I've shown you in the interior enclosures. So similar sort of setup. Oh, I put that roof in as well, so the roof is brand new, I think. I don't think that was in for the last video. It's supposed to be sort of a chain link netting type thing with a girder structure, and that is how I've used the glass pieces to try and mimic that. It doesn't work amazingly well because of the frames, but it's the best that I could come up with for now. Each of those three sections has got one of those climbing tree things, and then the roof work at the top, and we have also added this window here, so that looks out over our rear enclosure. Quite a nice view, and you can also see our working building over here. So that is our realm of the Red Ape build. It is huge. It can't all go on the workshop as a result, but I might do the same that I did with the Spirit of the Jaguar. If you would like this, then I can put it up as a zoo itself, just this section, and then you can build around it to your heart's content, do whatever you want with it. So if you would like that, let me know in the comments below. Please do, if you like what we're doing, please do subscribe so that you can keep up to date with all of the videos that we're making. Each episode comes out. I'm trying to do them weekly, but I've really fallen behind because of how extensive some of the work in these are. But I will make an effort to come back to a weekly schedule. Judge me on how well I do next week or next weekend. Let's see if you see me. Also, if you do like this video, please do press like to let everybody know, because that will help us to get to the people that will actually like these videos. So yeah, people similar to you and me, presumably. Thank you for joining us, and I will see you again next weekend. Bye.